Well, Evans, I don't know what you were looking forward to going into this particular speech, and whether Martha has been talking about the fact that he had no expectations, was a bit skeptical about it, and it doesn't look like her expectations were met as well. How about you, Evans?
I have always said on State of Play that for Bawumia to have any chance of convincing anybody that he is a man for the job 2025, he must create a distance between himself and his current boss. And so I was looking forward to hearing how he does that. And I've said before that as politicians, before and especially when you're in government, the first thing you need to do when you're taking on an issue, when it's so obvious that there have been challenges and there have been failures, is to ask yourself, what do I concede? So those two things must go together for me. And so I was expecting those two things. I think he delivered on the distance. He created a distance between himself and the current boss, his current boss. But he failed in the second, where he didn't concede much. Now, as you know, the economy has been in shambles. It's been the most catastrophic administration of an economy in the Fourth Republic. The results are there for all of us to see. Yes, COVID-19 played the role. Yes, Ukraine played the role. But certainly, the quality of management of the economy also was a factor. So for him to mention Ukraine and to mention also COVID, but fail to mention that they themselves in the management of the economy had made mistakes, for me was a big negative for him. If he had managed to pull the two together, he will possibly have won a few people over, particularly the floating voters, right? Because if you listen to the criticism, it's about identifying with the suffering of the masses. Because the reality is, people are suffering. Times are extremely hard. I mean, many have compared this to the 1903, and some have said it is worse. We all know, at least in the Fourth Republic, this is the worst we've seen. Just look at inflation. Unprecedented inflation levels. Yes, it's coming down, but it's so very, very high. If you look at the cost of living, we've been running a cost of living series for more than a year. Now, that should tell you that people are struggling. Now, for the vice president not to acknowledge that and talk about the mistakes that has happened and how he's hoping now to fix that mistake was for me a minus. But he created a distance between himself and the president, which for me was something I was expecting him to do. The mentioning of the abolition of the e-levy was a bold one for him to state, especially when that policy is still being implemented. And many of us had known for so long that he was not in support of the e-levy at the time that it was introduced, for which reason he kept quiet about it and rarely spoke about it at all.
But that's where Martha's analogy comes in, Evan.
The time when it's been implemented.
But isn't that where Martha's analogy about the driver's mate not speaking up when indeed something is going wrong and the driver is not driving right? Why keep quiet when you're against it and wait until you want to outline your vision before you put it out?
I mean, for strategic political reasons, he believed he had a good shot at being the party's flag bearer. I mean, if you find yourself in that position, you either come out and speak against the group and lose traction and then possibly kill your own presidential ambitions. I've heard others argue that if he had the courage of his convictions, that is what he should have done. And there's a solid point there, that if you're part of the group that take a decision that you disagree with sometimes, the principal thing to do is to say, well, I'm sorry, I can't be part of this. So that's one thing. But realistically, I don't think that any politician with a good shot at being the flag bearer of the party would have taken that step, especially when you are the vice president. So I understand why he did it.
Okay.
Again, we don't know to what extent he went in cabinet, in economic management meetings to oppose it. But he had come out categorically to say that he will abolish it. Whilst he's still the vice president, and many have said that he threw another under the bus, but the person that hasn't been mentioned that he also threw under the bus is the finance minister. So for me, he made that point. He made that point. He made that point about abolition. I think that's a bold one to say, and we wait to see what reactions we'll get from the loyalist of Akufo-Addo, and whether or not this was negotiated with Akufo-Addo before he came public to say it. And for me, that's a key next step for me to watch.
Okay.